We're about to start our keynote presentation for today. The emerging role of XR in communal ecosystems of learning, immersive simulations for situated learning, presented by Dr. Chris Dede. And it's my honor and pleasure to be able to introduce Chris today, to which I'm pretty sure he doesn't need much of an introduction, but it's absolutely my honor. So without further ado, I think I'll dive in and then turn the show over to Chris. So prior to becoming a senior research fellow, for 22 years, Chris Dede was the Timothy E. Worth Professor in Learning Technologies at Harvard University Graduate School of Education. His fundamental interest in developing new types of educational systems to meet the opportunities and challenges of the 21st century. His research spans emerging technologies for learning, infusing technology into large-scale educational improvement initiatives, developing policies that support educational transformation, and providing leadership in educational innovation. Currently, Dede is a co-principal investigator of the National Science Foundation-funded National Artificial Intelligence Institute in Adult Learning and Online Education. Chris co-founded the Silver Lining for Learning initiative and developed a widely used framework for scaling up educational initiatives. From 2001 to 2004, he served as chair of the Learning and Teaching program at Harvard Graduate School of Education. Dr. Dede is an advisor to the digital puppeteering company Immersive, in which he has an equity stake. I am very proud to have called Chris a friend and a mentor for these past, I think, 17, 18 years. And he has been instrumental in helping us to conceive of the Immersive Learning Research Network, having done a lot of work as our honorary co-chair back with the American Education Research Association starting in 2007. So it is my big honor to welcome Dr. Chris Dede to the stage. Chris?
Well, Jonathan, thank you, and thanks to all of you for coming. It's great to see participants from all across the world. We can say that the sun never sets on iLRN. I have several objectives for this keynote. The primary objective is to introduce the membership of the new iLRN community of scholars. And this, I believe, will be of great benefit to iLRN, whether or not you're a member of the iLRN community of scholars, and also to the field. And if you're thinking, well, I'm not a scholar, this is going to expand over time. So you can have an aspirational vision to join us in the community. But as the title suggests, I'm also going to present a hypothesis about the evolution of immersive learning, that we're moving towards communal ecosystems of learning, and talk about one possible grand challenge that the community of scholars could consider that's related to this hypothesis, the grand challenge of developing immersive simulations for situated learning. But then I'm going to get off of the podium and we'll ask everyone in attendance to spend a few minutes typing your ideas about other grand challenges into the chat and reading other people's ideas and responding to that, so we can have kind of a mini meeting of those of us who are here to discuss the agenda for the community of scholars. And then I'll turn things over to Jonathan, who will discuss the community of scholars in more detail and outline next steps. So that's the menu for the presentation. But unlike a standard presentation where I would use slides to illustrate what I'm talking about, instead, I'm going to be using slides to display representative members of the community of scholars. And the selection mechanism was simply that If they sent me a slide, they're in the group that's being presented. And if they didn't send me a slide, then they're certainly in the community of scholars, but they're not going to be displayed today. And those slides will be displayed for about 30 seconds each in alphabetical order by last name. And when they finish, I think you'll see what an incredible group of people this is. So I'm asking you to multitask because I'm going to be talking about one thing, but you'll be looking at a different thing. But if you have difficulties multitasking, then I think focusing on the community of scholars slides is probably the better bet. You can always go back and look later at what I've said, or the entire talk is available through the conference site. So here's our first slide, and while that's displaying, let me talk about my hypothesis. One of the things that has troubled me about the outsider's view of different forms of XR, VR, MR, AR, and so on, is that they seem to view it as an all or nothing kind of thing. So there's a metaverse and you live in the metaverse, or you find a way somehow to wear a VR headset for a huge amount of time. And that's never seemed right to me. Google Glasses tried that and failed, because people like to live in an ecosystem of different kinds of reality, some of which is immersive in virtual terms, some of which is immersive in real world terms, and they move around among different niches in that ecosystem. So our goal, I believe, isn't really to somehow come up with some universal digitally enhanced place that everybody wants to be all the time, but rather to come up with some niches that are powerful in terms of learning because they're based on XR, but also niches that inform the other niches in the ecosystem that don't use XR directly. So put another way, we're constantly doing situated learning. Sometimes we're situated in digital ecosystems, sometimes we're situated in real world settings, but being able to read the context and learn from the context is not something that we're typically taught in schools, because in schools you're doing more guided learning with an instructor present. So the opportunity to do design-based research on various types of immersive niches in the overall ecosystem, and then maximize the value of those niches in terms of how people not only learn in that niche, but they're empowered to learn in all the other niches is, I think, very interesting. So within that hypothesis, if you buy into it, there's an interesting grand challenge in terms of one kind of niche. And that's a niche for immersive simulations for situated learning that allow authentic practice with mentoring. Now, this has been a vision for immersive learning from the very, very beginning in the 1960s. And if you look at books like Jeremy Bailenson Experience on Demand, for example, a lot of those images of the power of immersive learning are based on practice in authentic settings that help empower you in the real world. There's a variety of XR now that is practical, that allows different ways of doing that practice. So Jonathon mentioned that I'm an advisor to the digital puppeteering company, Immersion. The avatars that you're practicing with there are digital, but there's a human being behind them. And that allows a very rich and powerful kind of interaction that cannot be duplicated by having a computer or an AI behind that digital avatar. So with my colleague Rhonda Bondi, who was at Harvard and is now at NYU, I'm sorry, City College of New York, I've co-authored articles on using immersion to help teachers practice equitable learning. I've also worked with using immersion to teach people negotiation. And there are articles referenced in my slides for the talk that discuss this. But now, because of the advance of generative AI, we also have the opportunity to have full natural language processing and to have an AI chatbot or multiple AI chatbots as part of the virtual setting in which you're practicing negotiation or teaching or whatever the skill is that you're attempting to learn. So now, if you will, we can imagine this niche having different levels. And at the high end, you're interacting with a human being who might be playing 3 or 4 digital avatars at the same time. Let's say you're negotiating for a raise with your bosses. But at the lower end, we can have practice environments that aren't quite as sophisticated, but that are a lot cheaper, in which you are interacting with chatbots of different kinds. My colleague at Harvard, Professor Nicole Mills, who is head of the Department of Romance Languages and who teaches the Introduction to French courses to our undergraduates, has worked with Wanda VR, a French company, to develop some really interesting and powerful experiences where you are in a virtual French museum that corresponds to a real French museum. There's been a murder committed. You're a little like Columbo. You have to go in and interview suspects and try to solve the murder. And the suspects are chatbots. So in contrast to the idea that chatbots can be really smart and they can be universal sources of knowledge, which I, for one, do not believe for good reasons, the idea that chatbots can be like extras in a movie that play a relatively narrow role, but play it well and add collectively to the overall authenticity of the experience, that is certainly something that's now becoming quite practical. Something else that could enhance this niche would be transformed social interaction. And I think of the work of Jeremy Bailenson, who's one of the scholars, and Mel Slater, who's another one of the scholars, to very carefully articulate different kinds of transformed social interaction, including identity transfer, where you look in the immersive world different than you look in the real world. But even something as simple as directed gaze, where if you're in an environment and you're trying to learn from somebody and you're part of a group that's learning, but the person who's teaching is always looking directly at you, right in front of you, which is something impossible in the real world, but not difficult in the virtual world. That kind of experimentation with transformed social interaction, I think, is another dimension that's underexplored, that now we have the opportunity to open up. So I'm excited about this idea that both through digital puppeteering and through generative AI and using techniques like transformed social interaction, we can really begin to create very powerful practice experiences for people that are available anywhere, anytime, and that at least the low and the medium end are not expensive. But I want to be cautious about just what generative AI can and cannot do in terms of pairing with XR. I think that 90% of what I read about generative AI in education is garbage. And I'm struck by how many experts there are who were experts in VR 3 years ago, experts in the metaverse 2 years ago, miraculously experts in AI today. And when the next bright, shiny object comes along, wow, they're going to be experts in that too. There are many good reasons for believing that large language models are not capable of what we might call artificial general intelligence, Hollywood AI, where you have uh, generative AI, artificial general intelligence that can have a lot of human characteristics and properties. In fact, um, large language models do not actually comprehend anything that's said to them. They can respond appropriately because of the kinds of neural networks and stochastic statistical analyses that they use, but they don't understand what you said and they don't understand what they're saying. So they're like a brain without a mind, if you will. And the brain can do something very powerful, natural language processing, but it also is very limited in terms of what can be done with that natural language processing. This goes all the way back to when I was in graduate school, and I read a book by Joseph Weizenbaum, who was at that time a professor at MIT, who was an expert in natural language processing and AI at that time. And Weizenbaum created a little app called Eliza, named after Eliza Doolittle from Pygmalion, who was a Rogerian psychotherapist mimic. So way back in the day, Carl Rogers was an influential figure in psychotherapy, and he believed that the therapist should mirror what the patient was saying. So you'd go into the therapist, you'd say, I had a rough day today. Therapist would say, I hear that your day was difficult. My boss is really a creep. I hear you saying your boss is part of the problem. And then every once in a while, the Eliza would say something like, how do you feel about your mother? To make it a little more therapeutic, pseudo-therapeutic. Well, Weizenbaum was horrified because people would spend hours and hours and hours talking to Eliza, which didn't understand a single word. It was just a bunch of clever tricks on pattern matching in language, and thinking that they were getting back therapeutic advice. And even today, 60 years later, we see similar kinds of things going on where people are confiding in AI companions and thinking that they understand something about you when in fact they don't understand anything at all about you. So I know that some of you who may be optimists about generative AI are kind of horrified by my discussion at this point, and you might be saying to yourself, well, that might be true today, but give us 5 years and give us $10 billion and we'll have artificial general intelligence. Well, I don't agree. And the reason is that I don't think large language models are structurally capable of artificial general intelligence. I remember when I first heard that dogs could sing, and I was excited. I went to YouTube and I watched some videos of dogs singing. It was amazing. But it wasn't very long until I realized that dogs might be able to sing, but they didn't sing very well by human standards. And you could spend $10 billion in 10 years trying to improve dogs' ability to sing. And at the end, you wouldn't even have a barbershop quartet that people would listen to. Dogs structurally are not set up to be capable of human singing. And large language models structurally are not capable of artificial general intelligence. So it's a valuable step forward. I think one of the most powerful things it unlocks is this grand challenge that I'm talking about, the ability to use AI-based characters as part of a richer artificial experience that enables people to practice skills that are complex, like negotiation, like teaching, like a doctor interviewing a small child about how they're feeling, and so on. And the work of people like Balanson and Slater and other people who are part of the community of scholars here really illustrates all the possibilities that this opens up. But we need to be very careful about understanding the role of the bots in all of this, that it's not like this is approaching digital puppeteering where there's a genuine human being behind the mask that operates. So why am I spending time arguing that this is a really important grand challenge? Well, we live in a very turbulent and disruptive world. And the fact of the matter is that we're all going to have to be learning continuously throughout our lifetimes. And a lot of that will be self-directed learning. Nobody can afford, 4, 5, 6 master's degrees or 2 doctoral degrees and all the costs and time that the formal education would involve. We're going to have to graduate from formal education really well equipped for self-directed learning, so that as we have multiple careers, as we face multiple challenges, as we go through turbulent times that nobody can anticipate, we're well prepared to thrive on chaos, as Tom Peters would say. And I don't think that that comes from improv. I think that that's ultimately based on simulated practice that gives you the self-confidence, the self-efficacy, the growth mindset, the resilience, the tenacity, the confidence to be able to go out into the real world and really work to try to make a profound difference in the real world. So my nomination, which has no special weight connected with it, is to say that first, I think that our goal is not to create an XR environment that people live in all the time, but XR niches that people move in and out of as part of a larger ecosystem of experience, some of which is augmented digitally, some of which is not. And second, that one of the very interesting niches that has been a long-term vision for the field, but now is something that is more practical than it's ever been, is this idea of authentic simulations for practice, and that there are tremendously interesting design challenges and research questions that come out of this that are worth investigating. So we're almost through with the slides that show not everyone in the community of scholars, but people who sent me a slide, for which I'm grateful. And I want to say how dazzled I am. When I got all these slides and I sat down and I looked at them, I was really struck by what a powerful community this is and how multidimensional it is across many different levels. Now, I have status as a fellow or a scholar in several professional associations because I've been around for a while and I've tried to make a difference. And so I've ended up getting sort of the equivalent of lifetime achievement awards. I'm a fellow in the American Educational Research Association, for example. And those are nice. I like the Lifetime Achievement Award concept. I think it's good to have a group of fellows based on that. But that's not a collection of people that's going to be good at inventing the future. That's a collection of people who are relatively old, who come out of a time that wasn't very diverse, who have a limited perspective, and who may not have the energy that younger people do. I'm an exception to that, of course, but overall, that's the characteristic that I'm describing. And so iLRN is being so smart by not having the equivalent of a lifetime achievement group, but instead having a group, and these slides illustrate that is incredibly diverse along any kind of spectrum of diversity that you care to name, and that brings together different kinds of skills. So research skills, education skills, outreach skills, design skills. It's surrounding the elephant with different kinds of strengths. And I think this community, as a complementary community of people, can accomplish amazing things that could not be done by a more traditional kind of set of scholars or set of fellows or other things that are based on lifetime achievement. So I'm just really pleased to be part of this group, and I'm excited about the opportunities that it offers. And I don't have any special role within this. I understand that I'm doing this keynote, and I'm honored to have been selected to be part of the group, but I wasn't involved in this election. I'm not the quote unquote leader of the group. I don't think the group should have a leader. I think it should self-organize. I think that there might be people within the community who take on different kinds of organizational roles because that's important and useful in the real world. But I don't view myself as necessarily having any special status, and I'm just excited about contributing to the mix and throwing in ideas about grand challenges. So these are the slides that I would have used if I weren't showing off the community. I'm not going to take you through them, but you're welcome to come and look at them as part of the resources that are available through the conference. So what I would like to do now is something different, which is to say, let's go to the chat and let's spend 10 minutes. So I'm really putting this out as a major opportunity for people who are participating today to post into the chat, whoever you are, you don't have to be a scholar, your thoughts about grand challenges that the community of scholars can undertake. And I'm hoping that you will both post and that you will read other people's posts and maybe comment on other people's posts. So we can have a little mini kind of a flash mob sort of chat conversation about the community of scholars. And then we'll move on to turn things over to Jonathon. So please start posting into the chat whatever you want to talk about in connection with this opportunity. And let's see the kinds of ideas that come bottom up. My question is, please post into the chat something you'd like to see the community of scholars do, whether that be a grand challenge of the kind that I outlined, whether that be comments on my grand challenge, whether that be thoughts about the community overall, just whatever you want to share so that we can begin acting as a community and having a dialogue as a community. I'm really enjoying these posts, and I also suggest that you are finding other people through this that may have similar goals to your own. And so beginning a dialogue with them, for example, I see a number of people who would like to see a focus on ethics, forming a sort of a mini community with them to advocate within the larger community, I think makes a lot of sense. I see accessibility emerging as another theme that a lot of people are talking about as a way of helping groups that are historically marginalized. So this is great, and I just wanted to take some of the time to illustrate in the keynote that the community is not about people giving lectures, even though I did in the keynote. But of course, the slides were the real message in terms of the range and scope and depth and diversity of the people who are now in the mix, and the opportunity for those of you who aren't currently scholars to attain that status as iLRN moves forward. I hope that we have a way of preserving the chat so that we all have access to it afterwards, including people who weren't able to be here and put their thoughts into the chat. And at this point, I would like to get off the stage and ask Jonathon, who is the real intellectual architect of the community of scholars, to talk about his thoughts about the community, his visions for where it might go, and his ideas about next steps. So Jonathon, over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate it. That was a fabulous presentation. I was a little distracted by all of the incredible slides with the community, the Circle of Scholars, but really provocative thinking there in terms of simulations and how we might be able to take advantage of those. I agree with I really liked your analogy with getting dogs to sing. I'm gonna borrow that, I think. I do need to get my slides sharing here. There we go. And view the slideshow. Whoops. Can everybody see my slides okay? My slide. Okay. So thank you. I really want to just take a few minutes today to thank everyone for accepting the invitation, and thank you to Chris for helping me to sort of frame and develop this idea, and many, many others. There's a lot of people that have gone into this. iLRN is now at our 10th anniversary. It's just incredible. We've come this far. And I'd like to share just a little bit of background on this, in addition to continuing to thank people. So this kind of goes back to 2007 with the American Education Research Association that Chris mentioned briefly a little bit ago. This is kind of our origin story, the Immersive Learning Research Network. And we formed this special interest group. We had a couple hundred people that were active in the SIG, members paying, paying memberships. We focused on educational research in virtual worlds, augmented reality, and video games. Really built and focused on creating sort of an educational research foundation and a community around immersive learning. And we had a lot of people that were really involved in AERA and in our special interest group, the Applied Research in Virtual Environments for Learning, and really worked hard to be inclusive and to expand to so other researchers could see themselves within this. But the word virtual at the time, this is the days of Second Life in its heyday. A lot of people that were doing work in augmented reality or games or simulations research didn't really see themselves in the frame of virtual. So after much discussion, kerfuffle, we decided to switch the name to Immersive. So we went from Arval SIG and officially became Aerial SIG, the Applied Research in Immersive Environments for Learning. That was around 2010. So every year we would go from one great North American city where AERA was hosted to another. We went to Chicago, we went to New Orleans, we went to Vancouver, British Columbia, San Francisco, California. And in each of those cities, there's amazing culture, and there's amazing people, and the way that those cities have evolved with their history over the years, incredible to immerse in. And we would find places that we could immerse in that were relevant to our SIG. So we'd go to the Exploratorium or the Tulane Medical Simulation Center, and really every year started thinking about the conference being an immersive experience itself for our SIG. And that kind of grew into the Immersive Learning Research Network. And we felt like we were a bit constrained, not able to attract the game developers and the psychologists and the computer scientists and others. This was an educational research conference with 20-some thousand plus people gathered, and it was great. But with Chris and with Dennis Beck and Patrick O'Shea and Amy Washburn and others, we all decided that it might be a good idea, although risky, to step outside of AERA and see if we could go somewhere. So partnering with Michael Gardner and Christian Goodle and a number of others, we joined forces and created iLRN in 2014, had a symposium at Oregon State University, and then an IEEE special track in 2015. During this time, we really did feel like immersive learning was taking off. Chris had a great article in this journal, Science, that really synthesized the evidence for how immersive learning can impact engagement in learning. So that's, some years ago, we were really excited, and it really felt like it was just around the corner for things to really fully emerge. And we've kept at it, and we've kept working as the hype has built and crashed, and several times in a row. But those of us that have been collaborating in this area have stuck it out, and we continue to feel like it's just around the corner, I think. But we've definitely made a lot of progress in the time being. So thinking about this emerging discipline of immersive learning, we had just a lot of ideas, a lot of brainstorming, many people involved. There's no way I could fit them all on this list. There's no way that I could definitely call each one of those people out. I'd be definitely remiss, though, if I didn't include our board members, which I put here on the left of the screen. These people, these friends and colleagues, have been instrumental in helping shape and develop this idea of immersive learning as an emerging discipline, a scholarly practice. So it's just been absolutely phenomenal to be able to collaborate with Chris and with these people and many, many others over the years. And it's just, it feels like we're, again, reaching sort of a moment, and I'm extremely honored to be playing a particular role as facilitator to maybe help continue to push all of our collective efforts forward. There's two other people I'd like to also specially name, and one organization, and that is IEEE. IEEE has been a great collaborator, publisher, and an organization with whom we have collaborated in a variety of different ways, beginning with the International Consortium of Innovation and Collaboration in Learning Engineering, through then Chair Mark Lee. They took on sort of our State of XR and Immersive Learning Report project initially, as we were at the time unable to do anything with it. And Mark graciously collaborated with us. Later, iLRN then took it back on, and Mark collaborated with us more, eventually becoming the chief research officer for iLRN and really helping with iLRN for a number of years. Mark, thank you so much for all of the work you did. But it was Mark who really sat down, and we sort of penciled out this idea of this circle of scholars. Andy Dangle is another one, more recent. Andy is an up-and-coming scholar, and he and I have had many, many conversations. Andy is now the present chair. Christian Goodle was the original chair, but he's now the present chair for the IEEE Technical Committee on Immersive Learning. And we look to Andy and to that group to continue to collaborate and develop these standards in this, and helping us to frame some of these efforts. So in working with all these people, we kind of thought that there's kind of three primary sources of immersive learning scholarship. And as Chris noted, there's a big diversity of types of people, backgrounds of people, all with incredible expertise that bring to bear on sort of this group. And not all of them are senior. Actually, some of them are fairly young in their approach and in their careers. But we have kind of these three broad areas that we've been thinking. We use these old world metaphors to make them somewhat accessible for everyone around the world, coming from different cultures, backgrounds, and prior experience. One is this tree, this immersive learning network knowledge tree that we use academic and applied research. So what is the evidence for what works in immersive learning? And can we bring it all together where we can erase the disciplinary boundaries and develop a common understanding and then promote it to the world so that other people can see how immersive learning works and why should we use it? The lighthouse scans the horizon, right? Or it could be a lantern as well, shining a light on the future. These are futures and change studies. You know, the academic research and the applied research takes time to get your funding and get out there, gather data, analyze it, and publish it. But the immersive future looks at the other side, where there's things that are coming over the horizon that spell big changes for the learning potentialities of our various populations. And so with Maya Georgieva and a great deal many other futurists and other people that are constantly looking at and systematically collaborating on identifying these trends, we think that futures and change studies is another form of legitimate scholarship for this field, at least for the foreseeable future. Finally, there's Innovation Garden, the garden where we nurture people to try these brand new things. And these are the designers and the educators who are taking this brand new technology around which there's no research yet, and they're trying them in the classroom to see if they work, and then sharing that with others. And that is another form of scholarship. And we find that to be a real value to shine light on what works for immersive learning. So the tree, the lantern or the lighthouse, and this garden are kind of collectively, we think, we hope, these different audiences, and our board reflects this population with directors working on each. So the idea for the Immersive Learning Research Network's Circle or Community of Scholars Advisory Board are these two things: identifying these grand challenges. What are the grand challenges facing the emerging field of immersive learning, right? How do we get together? How do we erase boundaries? How do we keep on top of these incredible, fast-paced, interconnected, and complex changes? And then conversely, or flip side, is what grand challenges that humanity and our world faces that immersive learning can solve? Can we model climate change? Can we model human bias in ways that really allows people situated understanding to be able to help solve some of those really capricious problems, these issues that so many of us around the world are facing? So we have these, we're proposing these three interlocked phases or sections for this circle or community of scholars, each contributing perspective and building atop one another. There's an internal scan, there's an external scan, and there's a collaborative step or phase. So we propose to do this annually for our Circle of Scholars during our summertime. A lot of times people want to take summer off, but this possibly is a good moment for the Circle of Scholars or the community of scholars to use some of their summer moments or summertime in the Northern Hemisphere to be able to do these three steps. And it's asynchronous and it's web-based. So we're hoping that it's not a massive push. So July and August each year, we're hoping that the internal scan can happen, identifying what are the challenges for immersive learning as we emerge as a discipline and professional practice? The external scan, so what things might immersive learning help solve of our larger world? And then producing sort of those results early in the year can then lead up to whatever if the scholars decide to collaborate on to present at the following community, and then that cycle would start over. So again, internal, external, collaborate. And we have, I think, set up the Immersive Learning Research Network to prepare to help this circle of scholars for this greater collective impact. Not only do we have a variety of initiatives at iLRN that we've been working over the past 10 years, but our infrastructure, we believe, is set up for this as well. Our Envision community, which is our website, is an association management system, so the circle of scholars can have their own forum to be able to do the internal, external scanning work. They can do this privately, they can be themselves, they can talk about these things. The Frame VR campus is our new virtual campus where we can create showcases of these grand challenges, as well as populate a variety of places for people to co-create and share some space together. And then our Discord, of course, we change up, and it's organic, and it changes every year according to the grand challenge around our conference theme. So this stack for our community is what we have presently. It'll change, it'll evolve as it does. But the different groups within iLRN, including that led by the community of scholars, we hope we'll be able to create a common springboard for all other kinds of platforms. And we want to depend, or hope we can depend on our community to shine a light, as is done during these conferences and during our meetups and during our webinars, et cetera, to shine a light on the various corners of the metaverse where good learning is happening. So September 1st through to the next conference in June, our Scholar Fellows can collaborate with the community on whatever they choose. They can then showcase their contributions at the conference, and that cycle can start all over. So this fall, we're starting September 1st, and we're hoping to have taken stock of the grand challenges facing immersive learning and some of the grand challenges that immersive learning might be able to solve. We'll have an initial kind of first report by these scholars ready sometime in September, and we're getting ready for the Chicago iLRN2024 conference, which with the theme of reading the world, immersive learning and multimodal literacies. This idea is that, much like we had for the past 500 years, where words and reading literacy was the key to mobility and financial well-being, so are we looking for perhaps these immersive experiences and all these other multimodal literacies as being pathways for people to understand. And how do we get there? That's kind of a grand challenge framed within the Chicago, Illinois 2025. And we work around the calendar towards this. So Circle of Scholars is not necessarily having to work during this time, but they're welcome to collaborate and work towards this Chicago event. So then as we round the corner to June, when we have the conference in Chicago, the Circle of Scholars would then work on their second year, July and August, to then work towards Athens, Greece, which will be June 27th through the 30th in 2026, and so on. So identifying grand challenges and helping to point the direction and provide some real light for the rest of the network to be able to do their work to do good in the world. So the iLRN Scholars will serve to set the tone and the outlook for tackling these challenges of immersive learning and helping our community to realize our collective potential. These United Nations Sustainability Goals are just one sort of way of looking at North Stars or grand challenges that we might do. And then our initiatives through our regular webinars, our community meetups around the globe, and all year long can go out through socials and pushing to the public. We're a public nonprofit, and for the public eye to attract them and get them involved in iLRN. So we're hoping that this circle of scholars, this community of scholars, can help us to really push this new mission, this focused mission that iLRN, the board of directors, along with me, have helped to create, which is this professional association to advance the quality of immersive learning to benefit humanity and our world. And I'm so excited to get everyone's feedback and collaborate with you all. And it's just a massive honor to be able to speak and work with you all today. So thank you so much. Back over to you, Chris.
Well, I'm excited. It's not often, as I look at those slides, it's not often that I have a chance to work with a group that has so many talents and so many perspectives. One of the things that's really troubling about society now is that there are so many xenophobes, people who are afraid of other people who are different than they are. And I think part of the reason that I've accomplished a good deal is that I'm a xenophile. I get excited interacting with people who are quite different than I am. And I think the community or the circle of scholars is a terrific opportunity to do that. So I hope this keynote is not the end of a kind of a celebration of the selection, but instead the beginning of longer dialogues in which I'm very happy to be a part. And I want to thank people again for coming, given that 9 a.m. Eastern time, while it's great for me, is not necessarily good for everybody else.
Yeah, looks like great chat going on. Thank you so much, everyone. Like Chris said, this is just the beginning, so we're not entirely sure where all of this is going. I think we're going to need to put some real effort into, these are extremely busy professionals, and we want to make sure that they're able to be supported in being able to do this kind of work. So I hope that this wasn't terrifying for you scholars with sort of laying out sort of a work plan or an idea on how we might be able to do that. But I can guarantee you that the iLRN executive committee and other initiatives are prepared to lean in and help make this a real success. So just wanted to thank all of you again. I was definitely getting dazzled as I was looking at those slides as well. It's what a group. Thank you so much.